everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I'm joined by Mark Heger. Stay tuned. Hello Mark, how are you?
Hey TV, how are you? I'm great.
Yeah, good, thank you. So finally starting to be able to chat after a long time.
Yeah. I'm really thankful that you got this set up and really excited to talk about some green tree pythons.
Yeah, you have a nice collection and quite good husbandry things to let people know about. So that's why I was thinking about you if you're willing to do one. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure actually if you're willing to do it. So it's nice.
For a chance to talk about green tree pythons, I'm always excited to do it.
Sure. So if you can tell a little bit about you, how did you start with green trees and things like this?
Yeah. So my name's Mark Heger. I have been keeping green tree pythons for probably about 7, 8, 9 years now. And started out with just one as a baby, and then green tree pythons are kind of like potato chips. You can't have just one. You gotta have the whole bag. So from there, started collecting different localities and different designer projects. And for me, the designer line that I think is just the coolest and the one that I tend to gravitate towards was always the calico line.
Okay.
And so a lot of the animals that I have are from that calico lineage, but I have I think 11 adults right now, and I have 7 babies that are from 2 different clutches that I had last year. And you can see the cages behind
Yeah, I
me.
can see them,
Yeah. So this is my small little snake room. It's actually a closet in our house that we converted to just hold the snakes.
It's better than nothing, better than sleeping with them. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my wife wanted she didn't want them in the bedroom, and she wanted the guest rooms to be for just guests and no snakes. So we found a way to do it.
I'm lucky enough that I managed to get a bedroom to to put them in.
Yeah, very
So,
nice. Maybe one day we'll get a whole room for them.
yeah, it's nice, but we can only hope for better.
Yeah.
So, how many adults do you have in your collection?
So right now, I think I have 10 or 11 adults.
Okay.
I'm really heavy on males right now. I've had some bad luck buying snakes that were supposed to be female, and then they end up being male. But when they're pretty and you can't get rid of them just because you like them so much. So
Yeah,
I have 3 females right now, and I think I have 8 males.
and what lines do you have? Only calico, or do you have something else?
Mostly I have calico. I have some high yellow stuff. I have Andrew Amon blue line male, and he fathered one of the clutches last year. I have a uh, a male from Noah and Chloe, which is a famous clutch from Rob Worrell. And he sired the other clutch. And then I have some locality animals. I have a Biak female,
It's really
and
big,
yeah, and a Jaipura and Lyra female up top. She's actually about to have her prelay shed in the next day or two. So we'll have
Fingers
eggs
crossed, yeah.
here shortly.
Yeah, and what actually do you wanna mix calico with Jayapura or something like that, or you just want to stick to calico with calico?
Yeah. So what I eventually want to do is cross some of the calico lines back into each other. And
Yeah.
so my plan is to use the males that I have to produce with different females, and then get babies from those, and then
again
cross
with the
them
males.
back in.
Yeah.
So to cross some of the famous calico blood back and forth to each other and see what kind of crazy snakes pop out.
Yeah, you need to keep them all to see
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's the truth.
Otherwise, even if you sell one, that may be the one.
Yep, yep,
So you never
definitely.
know. And as far as husbandry, how do you keep? Let's start with the yearlings
Yeah,
or adults or
yeah. So for my adults, these cages behind me,
yeah.
they are actually uh, black plastic tubs that are turned on their sides.
John
And
Irby, I
then
think, is using the same thing. I think,
it's
yeah.
very similar
Yeah.
to what John Irby does, and I would credit a lot of the ideas that I had to make these cage from seeing John Irby's cages that he made. So each of these is actually in a box, and the tub fits in that box, and then there's heat tape uh, around the back and around one of the sides to make a hot side and hotter towards the front. So
Okay.
I have a gradient side to side, but also front to back for the animals to regulate their body temperature
And what
anywhere they want
sizes
in the cage.
are the big cages?
Yeah, so they're 32 inches long, 18 inches deep, and 22 inches high.
And you're
So plenty of room for the adults to stretch out. Even my biggest female, she's probably she's right around 1,100, 1,200 grams, and she has plenty of room to stretch out.
and you're
And
using the same cages for males as well, or smaller
yeah,
ones? The
yeah,
same one.
all my cages are totally the same. A lot of people use deeper cages. They'll use the 2 foot deep cages, but I like having these shallower cages that are only 18 inches
18.
deep, so that you can get in there without being up to your elbow with a snake looking down on you. So yeah, and these work really well. They have great humidity, and then I have glass test the snake right there. Close it up. For water, I have uh, the uh, the elevated water bowls from
Okay.
Specialty Enclosure Designs. And then to mount the perches to the plastic tub, I also have the perch holders from
Wow.
Specialty Enclosure
And
Designs.
what temperatures do you keep the adults on?
So I try to have a hot spot of around 84, and then the cool side of the cage is usually around 80 to 81. That's during the day. And then throughout the entire year, I provide a night drop during the night.
Yeah.
And so during the whole year, I'll have about a -3 degree night drop. And then during breeding season for the females that I'm cycling and the males that I'm cycling, I'll drop their night drops to -6, -7 degrees from that original 84
Oh.
to 80,
And
2 degrees.
when you're breeding, you're doing food cycling as well, or only temperature cycling?
Yeah, yeah, I do food cycling, temperature cycling, and light cycling. So with the temperature cycling, that happens just by providing the night drop using the herp stats
Yeah.
is what I use for my temperature controls. And then food cycling, I'll actually fast my females and the males that I'm breeding for 2 months. During the first month, I'll just start dropping the temperature slowly. And then by the second month is when I'll start introducing the male into the female's cage. And then after that second month, I'll start feeding the female many small meals in pretty close proximity. So about every 5 to 6 days, I'll feed a female very small meals than
So
she
they can
normally would.
digest, yeah, quick.
Exactly. Yeah,
And
and for the past couple of years, we've had success with that here. So
if it works, keep it keep it like that.
exactly. If it's working, don't change it.
Don't change it. Yeah. What about the neonates? How do you keep them? How do you?
Yeah, so the neonates I keep in just a regular hatchling rack. in the shoebox style tubs. I use specialty enclosure design perches for them, as well as just plastic clothes hangers that have been cut and fit to size in those tubs. I use just paper towel as a substrate, and then a shallow water dish in there for them to drink out of. Now, for right when the babies come out of the eggs, and for about the first probably month, 2 months of getting them established, I don't have any substrate in there except water. And so
Bill
that
Stiegel,
really,
I think, was doing the same thing. Yeah, I've seen.
Bill does the same thing. It's a technique that I got from Bill. It keeps that I found it really helpful because with just a shallow, a couple millimeters of water in the tub, the neonates can get down on the floor of the tub. They can drink right from the floor, and it keeps the humidity really high for those first 2 or 3 sheds that are really important for them to get off. And you don't want to have a baby green tree python because they're so small. You don't want to have them getting stuck shed.
Yeah.
So really increasing that humidity, having that thin layer of water at the bottom until they shed at least 2 times, sometimes 3 times, just to make sure that they are totally good to go. And then I'll replace it with a paper towel and a shallow water dish.
And how do you heat the rack? Back heating? Or?
So this particular rack actually has belly heat towards the back of the tub. It's a sea serpents rack, and then I regulate it with a herpstat thermostat.
And
the
temperatures?
herpstat set at like set at 88 degrees, but that's so that in the I actually am getting temperatures with the temp gun at the back of the tub at around 86, and then at the front of the tub around 83, 84.
And I forgot to ask about the adults. How regular do you feed them when they are not in breeding? How?
Yeah.
And what?
Yeah. So for all of my snakes, I feed mice, and I get my my mice from Cold Blooded Cafe with Forrest and Desiree Fanning. They've been so great to work with, and just great friends to have in the snake community. For my females, I feed them around every 2 weeks, about every 14 days, and they'll get a large jumbo mouse. And then for my males, I feed them about every 20 days, so about every 3 weeks, and they'll get usually just a large adult mouse. So I feed pretty sparingly until when it comes time to increase the food for the breeding season.
And if you're feeding, let's say, 2 or 3 times, you stop feeding until they defecate, or you just keep going? And
I just keep going. I do track everything, so I have cards for all of these animals where I track their feeding, their defecation, and their shedding. All for each snake, I have records of everyone, but I don't wait for the snakes to defecate before I feed again. I've found that the males, for the most part, they will defecate within the first week of having a meal, sometimes in 2 weeks after, but the males will be very quick to process that food and then defecate it out, where the females will typically hold that food. They'll hold on and digest much slower. And so sometimes the females will have 3-4 meals before they have defecation. And I want to keep putting in the calories to make sure that those females are growing, are healthy, are doing well in the meantime.
And the neonates?
Yeah, so the neonates, during the first year and a half, I'm going to feed about every 7 days, and then slowly work my way up to 10 days until they're about 1.5 to 2 years old. each of the neonates, they're eating small meals just because they're really
Yeah.
small snakes. So they're starting out on just the smallest pinkies that I can get my hands on, pinky mice,
Nice. Yeah.
and then moving up as they get bigger.
I forgot to ask you, do you spray your animals or do you do anything to increase the humidity? How do you do?
Yeah, so I I only spray my animals when they're going into a shed cycle. So these cages they hold humidity relatively well, and I live down in Texas where it's already pretty humid. But for the most part, as long as I'm having fresh water in the cages, the snakes don't have any problem with shedding or becoming dehydrated.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that they need to miss their animals every single day, and in my experience, that has not been the case. That it'll actually have bad effects
Yeah.
where the snakes can get over humid. Their skin will get blisters, or the cage will get moldy, and
Bacteria,
so
yeah.
yeah. So for me, I only miss when they're in shed,
Normally, I
and
take the water bowl, just flip it upside down when they're in shed, and
yeah,
that's it.
yeah,
That's the only
just
thing I do.
soaking the cage floor,
Yeah.
and that's great. And I won't spray the cage again until it's totally
Totally.
dried out. To make sure that everything in there, just all the moisture, the humidity, has dissipated away, so that I'm not activating more bacteria than needs to be in there.
Yeah, and if you have a lot of humidity, you need to have a good ventilation, otherwise it doesn't work
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
you'll have
So
mold or bacteria or
right.
things like
So
that.
all these cages, I have 6 vent holes all across the back to make sure that the air that's in there is getting circulated. And then in this room, I have an exhaust fan up at the top that sucks all the air
Circulate. Yeah.
out of the room.
Have you ever tried more natural setups or?
So I have in the past. So my first green tree python, I had in a more natural setup, and she actually did fairly well in there. For me as a keeper, now that I have multiple snakes and I don't have a ton of time to dedicate to cleaning and maintaining and keeping up with a natural setup, for me personally, it doesn't work with the way that me as a keeper can provide the best husbandry for my collection. There's some people that I think having natural enclosures is awesome and it can work great. But
If
for
you know what you're doing.
yeah, if you know what you're doing, if you have the time to do it right and you've done the research, then I think it can be really beneficial. For me, I found that it doesn't work very well.
Yeah, it's really hard to keep it under control, otherwise you'd have more problems than solutions. That's what I think. So
Yeah,
if it's less in the cage, there are less things that can go wrong. So
yeah,
you have more control over them. But if you know what you're doing, I think they can have success with it. I don't know.
absolutely.
I think. So you said, I don't know if you said about the water. How often do you change the water?
So for the babies, I make sure that they have new, fresh, clean water in a new water bowl. So I use disposable water bowls for all my snakes, and I make sure the babies have fresh water every 3 to 5 days, and then the adults get water changes every 5 to 7 days.
Okay. I'm doing twice a week. So yeah, every 3, 4 days I'm doing.
Yeah,
But the more you have, the
yeah.
harder it is to get.
And I'm sure you've noticed that when you put in fresh water,
And
the
that night
snakes
they drink.
very quickly, as the lights go out that evening, you'll see them drinking out of the water dish. They really enjoy that fresh water, and
Even
hydration is so important for
when
the green
it's
trees.
really hot, so the weather is hot, if you put a cube of ice inside
Hmm.
the water bowl, they will trigger it really quick to go and drink it.
Yeah,
So I've noticed that
yeah,
the summer days, I don't know how they are attracted of that,
yeah. Who doesn't like a nice cool glass of water?
but yeah, that's true. So any advice that you would give to a beginner who wants to get a green tree, what would be your advice?
Yeah. So my advice to people that want to get into green tree pythons is one, to do a lot of research. I I think that a green tree python can make a great first snake, or a great snake for someone who's been keeping different species their entire life. But the problem that people run into is you can't treat a green tree python like you do every other snake. You have to do your research. And so if you set up the cage and the temperatures, and have the practices to keep the snakes healthy, they will be so easy to keep. In my opinion, the green tree pythons are one of the easiest species to keep because they're great for display. They don't make a mess. They don't musk. Most of them are very tame and not quick to bite or be
Yeah.
aggressive. But they really are great snakes. But you have to do the research to keep them properly in order to have all those other things go well. And so my advice is always do the research. Go to the Morelia viridis forum, the MVF. Go to the Facebook groups, and learn as much as you can. Read the books, and just learn, learn, learn. I think uh, for a lot of people, a green tree python isn't a good pet if they're not willing to do research and pay attention to details. But for people that want to put in the work, man, a green tree python is going to be a great snake.
You need to do the work and have the proper setup before you have the actual
Absolutely.
snake. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, there's no some. They are a little bit more not feisty. They have the higher feeding response. But
Yeah.
if you know how to read them, you learn how to read the snake. You don't have any issues with it. You know when to leave
Absolutely.
it alone. You know when to to mess with it.
Absolutely.
They are
Yeah.
really,
And then my other piece of advice would be to start with a good snake. A lot of people try and get their green tree pythons at pet stores, or at a reptile show where they don't know where that snake came from.
and they don't have the support that after you buy the snake, nobody's there to help you if you don't know what to do.
Right, exactly. And so whether you buy a green tree python from a breeder that's near you, or even someone that imports animals but is willing to talk to you and walk you through it, and provide that support, is so important. When you can have someone that knows the animal that you bought, and then to help you troubleshoot any problems that may or may not come up, uh, it is invaluable to have someone else's wisdom getting poured into your collection.
But if you start to do your research way before deciding or finding your green tree, you'll make friends along the way. And even if you don't know
Absolutely.
something, you still have to who to go. That's what I think the cases where people are not successful. There's an impulse buy. They see the snake, they go and buy it. They take a tank, put it in.
Yeah.
The snake died. Why?
Yeah.
That, and they are not that. If you have problems with them, they're not that prone to mistakes as, let's say, a corn snake. That's why people all the time say, they're hard to keep. They're hard to keep if you don't provide what they need. Yeah, because they get
Right.
ill quicker than a corn snake or a ball python or things like
Yeah.
that.
They are very sensitive snakes, and so they will pick up on the mistakes that you make as a keeper. But if you do your research and you know all that stuff, then man, they make such awesome animals.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah.
They really are. I want to get more as well, but
Yeah.
soon. soon. But anyway, my first green tree was from US, from the barn.
Oh, nice. Yeah. The barn produces amazing snakes. What is it? What's the what
From
was the pairing?
Serac or Lagerta, from
Yeah,
the one done with James Odorf.
absolutely. That's a
Yeah,
killer pairing.
yeah, it's this one here actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very pretty.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was my first green tree. Anyway, thank you so much, Mark. It
Yeah,
was
you're welcome.
really nice. And
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to share.
hopefully more people will see and they will learn and will make this hobby more accessible to people. Not a hobby, the species, because the hobby is already extended, but more and more people will start and get into green tree if they see that they are not so hard to keep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and we'll talk another time. Thank you. See
All
ya.
right, sounds good. See ya.